Good morning, gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you on behalf of APAC News Network to the third Global Education and Skills Conclave. This is a 3 day conference, and today is the second day. We had an inauguration session yesterday, attended by senior policymakers on the education side from the government, both from the central government and different state governments and industry. And then we had two parallel tracks on higher education and schools, and had six panel discussions yesterday where different facets of education, especially in these post-pandemic times, were discussed, and how technology is being leveraged, and how much more leverage is required were discussed. Today, the higher education track, we are starting with a very important discussion where all the India's premier institutions are being represented. So before I introduce all the panelists, perhaps it would be pertinent to just mention the partners who had supported us in this conclave, and without whose active support, maybe organizing a conclave of this magnitude is always not possible. So we have our state partners, the education departments of government of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Gujarat, Uttarakhand. We have government supporting partners from Department of Science and Technology. We had support from AICTE, from Quality Council of India. We have Innovation Norway as a country partner. We have Dell and Intel as our presenting partners, Microsoft as a technology partner, ViewSonic as a co-partner, Samsung as a display partner, Fortinet as a security partner, Crestron as a gold partner, Myanmar Technologies, FinanceSphere, and MapMyIndia as associate partners, APJ Education as education partner, UniApply as a school admission partner, Chitkara University as a university partner, Jaipuria Group of Schools as a group school partner, and Global India School, Central Public School, and Glendale Academy as our school partners. The session which we are having now is tentatively titled Global Best Practices in Higher Education, and what should be the new in this new normal roadmap for India's premier education institutions. So it's my privilege to now introduce all the panelists who are going to be in the discussion. We have with us Professor Dr. Ashutosh Sharma, the Institute Chair Professor and INA Visvesvaraya Chair Professor and Coordinator, DST Unit on Nanoscience and Center for Environmental Science and Engineering with IIT Kanpur. And as we all know, he has been in the Department of Science and Technology till very recently, and has been one of the pioneering faces for India's science and technology innovations and efforts. Welcome, Dr. Sharma. Next, we have with us Professor V. Ramagopal Rao, Director, IIT Delhi. Welcome, Professor Rao. We have with us Dr. Rajat Muna, Director, IIT Bhilai. Welcome, Dr. Muna. We have with us Dr. Pawan Kumar Singh, Director of IIM Tiruchirappalli. Welcome, Dr. Singh. We have with us Professor V. Rajakumar, Director of IIT Bhubaneswar. Welcome. We have with us Bhimarao Maitri, Director of IIM Nagpur. Welcome, sir. We have also joined by Sri Valan Shivasubramaniam. He's a Manager Systems Engineering from Fortinet with us. Welcome, Valan. So the format we will follow is, first I would request Professor Sharma to have deliver a short keynote address, and specifically on areas what we are looking at is in this hybrid or blended learning model, which is inevitable in the new normal. How are the premier institutions looking at it, and how can technology be leveraged in this blended learning model? And what are your views on it? So, once after this keynote from Professor Sharma, we will go to each of the panelists with a set of questions and take this deliberation further. Over to you, Professor Sharma.
Good morning, Namaskar. I'm so happy that we are discussing here perhaps the most important theme of the century, which is to do re-imaging of higher education. Of course, the changes in higher education have been going around with the rise of digital and cyber, but these changes have been greatly accelerated because of the new normals in the wake of pandemic. So clearly, we have lots of deep minds here, the leadership of many IITs who collectively are thinking about the processes and the structures that would be required for effectively communicating our education and really to reshape the landscape of that. I'm also very happy. I congratulate the APAC News Network for putting up this very compelling theme. Really, as I said, the theme of the century. Now, before we begin on discussing what the solutions to these problems are, we must first, it's a good idea to take a break after nearly a century or at least last 50 years to see what is it that we need in higher education, because if we don't know what the problems are, then the solutions that we are looking for might be barking up the wrong tree. So let me very quickly say what I feel should be the objectives, really, the targets of higher education. Clearly, higher education means to transmit knowledge with quality and with relevance and with connect. So I think these are three very critical keywords. And so if we know what is it we want to deliver, then we know what kind of technologies would actually be suitable for it. So it is about transmitting knowledge with quality, with direction, with relevance, and with connect. It is also about inventing and innovating new knowledge, which is what we call research and development. Research and higher education have to be very closely intertwined, and they indeed go together. The third aspect of higher education is not only to transmit and invent a new relevant knowledge, but also to give it some push for its absorption. In other words, it's not sufficient to create knowledge, but if that knowledge has direction and relevance, it must also go to its stakeholders. And universities, higher education have some role to play in that process of pushing our knowledge to industry, to catalyze innovation in the form of startups, to connect with NGOs, to connect with our society, the different stakeholders of society which could benefit from science and technology in a strong way. So, having said all of that, now, of course, the most important aspect of education, higher education, is actually culture. Now, you see, a whole lot of education has been reduced to cracking of exam and seeking your first job, which is all perfectly fine. But somehow we have forgotten in the process that higher education is all about learning, which basically means is about understanding the problems. It is about seeking their solutions with their multidimensional nature, and this is about lifelong learning. And this has never been more clear and more immediate than a post-pandemic in a world in which digital is the king. And the nature of jobs, the nature of skills, the nature of education, all of them are going to be hugely impacted. They've already been impacted in a very quick and disruptive way, but going forward, they would be impacted even more profoundly, more disruptively, because of the rise of AI, ML, Industry 4.0, autonomous systems, IoT, what have you, which impacts every aspect of our lives. So, what we need to really convey by digital means, by cyber means, by mixed mode, is that our goal is really learning because of the constantly shifting needs and priorities that would come up in the future. Enabling, empowering people for learning, for to make them understand that learning actually primarily is a responsibility of the student. Somehow we have shifted that burden 100% to the institute, to the teachers, and so on. Sometimes, in the lighter vein, I say that really bad teachers are the good teachers because they bring to you the opportunity for self learning. And so, why is that very important in terms of technology? You see, of course, not having a physical presence when teacher is not physically, in a certain sense, not interacting with the students, it means that the students, in a sense, have to carry greater responsibility, and that has to be actually clear to them. It is no point saying that they start, blaming the system and the teachers, etc., for the lack of their education because they are actually active participants in that process. So, about taking responsibility, and these are some of the cultural aspects of learning. Now, our goals of higher education, as we pointed out, transmission of knowledge, research and development, which is intertwined with transmission and creation of knowledge, and connecting it with different stakeholders or pushing that knowledge. How all of these are going to be affected? Let me just take one aspect. We The experimental education, the hands-on training, if you would, clearly is thought to be the worst sufferer of things, disruptive things, digital education, and so on. But it's not really so. So let us think about what new tools that come in from augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and so on. These tools are actually evolving, and now there is greatly accelerated pace, which is now attached to development of these tools. And I am sure that there would be new platforms. For example, the role of simulations and simulators, the role of clones, the role of avatars, the role of cyber twins or digital twins, whatever you may call them. These are actually great tools of learning. They are exciting tools of learning. So they have to be developed sooner than later. They have also been pushed for these, research equipment, wherein a whole lot of work can be done remotely. I know, for example, one facility that was supported by DST in IIT Madras worth tens of crores, several tens of crores. But this is something, you can send samples remotely. A whole lot of instruction can actually happen remotely. And the samples can be tested, characterized, whatever. So, a whole lot of research and education clearly is shifting online, remote. We have already seen that, but that's only the beginning because we are still not able to get the real feel, the reality of doing this kind of work, and that requires that we need new tools very, very quickly. Um, uh, Another thought is integrating demonstration experiments with our theoretical lectures. Now, often it happens that there is a complete divide, complete separation between experiments and the hands on knowledge and the theoretical lectures which are delivered at different times in different places and so on. Uh, Through these AR, VR stuff, it is possible to integrate very tightly the experimental learnings. What are the key messages of that experiment? How do you set it up? What is it that actually one learns by that experiment? In fact, just doing physical experiment is not a guarantee for learning. In fact, we have all done those undergraduate labs or other graduate labs and so on. Those basically follow a formula. They follow a recipe. They follow a manual. So it becomes rather mechanical. The whole point is that somewhere that experience of deep learning goes missing. So the point to ponder about is how do we get that experience back, which takes us into the domain of learning about designing experiments? What is it that they convey, and so on. Um, so we don't have a whole lot of time. I just set up some of the issues, problems, and then of course, how some of the things that would address them. The next question, of course, is to constantly reinventing our higher education curriculum and courses. And this is has become important because of rise of new disruptive technologies, because of the future which is coming at us at faster and faster rate. I can tell you, as a chemical engineer, some of the stuff I'm teaching is the same that I learned in the same way as an undergraduate. Maybe some of the same textbooks are being followed and so on. There's always a tension, there is always a conflict, there is always a debate about what is actually the core of a discipline and what is it that you add on. And of course, there's that constant conflict often is resolved in the favor of what is considered as the core of that discipline. But this is actually a very partial view of what is happening and what needs to happen. I do believe that whole lot of things that we consider core are not so much core. I know for sure, for example, as an example, the heat exchanger design in chemical and mechanical engineering, maybe 1 out of 100 people that we teach would ever use it. So it is, and of course, they have to use it, they will have to relearn it, no doubt about it. So, in any case, the point is how do we also introduce the new areas, for example, artificial intelligence, cyber physical systems, quantum technologies, parallel computing, high performance computing. How do we actually bring in education the convergence of different domains of knowledge? And I do believe that with digital tools, that this would be easier, in fact, than having a single instructor and a single course and a single class. So that model may have to undergo very fundamental changes. What are these convergences? For example, convergence of our traditional domains like materials, mechanical, electronics, and so on one hand, and the communication and distributed computing and autonomous decision making through machine learning, autonomous perception and autonomous actions through sensors and actuators, for example. So all of these things is basically the future is about the convergence of technologies and different streams of science. And as we know that technologies hunt in pairs. So 2 points are critical. One is the synthesis aspect in higher education, not just analysis. So our traditional model is going from chapter to chapter, from exam to exam, from course to course, and degree to degree. And really, we see no connection between these things, between one chapter, one course, and another. So I think our focus actually in higher education now is a great time. It is a good time. It is an opportunity, while it has been a challenge. I think it is an opportunity to very clearly examine the very foundations of how we have been doing higher education and to see that our basic goals of learning, self learning, relearning, acquiring new skills, problem solving, that all of them are actually effectively delivered, and the technology is made a big enabler or an empowering tool for all of this to happen. Um, so, okay, I'm out of my time, and so I would conclude there. Thank you very much.
Thanks. That was indeed great, and you sort of laid out the directions where higher education, the universities, and the premier institutions should undertake in the days to come. So now I will come specifically to each of the panelists, and while Professor Sharma has laid out the directions, I would like to discuss and know a little bit about what specific initiatives or actions have been undertaken. So I'll start with you, Professor Rao. My question is in terms of pardon?
Yeah, hello.
Hello? Yeah. Professor Rao, in terms of IIT Delhi, what are the technologies that have been deployed, especially in this virtual or blended learning mode training, and more importantly, experiential learning, especially in labs or things, how those have been simulated in this virtual mode so that better learning can be imparted. So, how has IIT Delhi looked at overall the technology deployment and especially in this blended learning model?
Yes, thank you very much. I don't know whether any better learning has happened during the COVID time. I think one thing that definitely has happened is when you think of learning now, the tendency is now for anyone to think anytime, anywhere kind of a learning. By sitting in a coffee shop, I should be able to take lectures, attend them, and and I should be able to do anytime that I want. So on-demand kind of education. I think that is one thing that has become a norm now. So we all need to live up to those expectations from the students. But unfortunately, all learning on our campuses is also associated with examinations. And that is where the problem arises. So when it comes to exams, I think the tendency also seems to be I should be allowed to take exams anywhere. I need not come to a classroom and all that. And I also should be able to clear exams anyhow. Doesn't matter what means I follow, I should be able to clear it. So I think these are the kinds of tendencies that are evolving now when it comes to that. So balancing all these very diverse requirements of the students and keep the standards still, what we have always been believing in IIT system has been the biggest challenge. And when you think of learning on particularly a campus like IIT, which is a totally residential kind of a campus, the education happens in multiple ways. One thing is the only one type of education is what happens in the classroom. That we have all been very successful. Digitizing all that content now took us just about 6 months' time. Now we have almost 1,600 of courses which are online and which are all recorded, and students can access them using Moodle, using all kinds of platforms are being used now. So we have also trained faculty in multiple platforms, and so that process has been smooth enough. Within 6 months, the training and all of that was done. In the next 6 months, all courses have become online. And but the major part of learning that happens on the campuses, particularly in IIT kind of a system, is by doing yourself, going to the lab, going to a tinkering kind of a place, trying to build something on your own, try to interact with people, consult them. Something doesn't work, how do you make it work? I think that part is completely missing, unfortunately. So that is difficult to even do online in many kinds of disciplines. The another way the learning happens on our campuses, where you have such bright students, is also through self learning. And that probably the pandemic has brought to the fore in a major way. Those who can learn on their own, those who can adapt very well to the new situation, they are the students who have finally managed to do pretty well. And the fourth way of learning is also the peer learning, because everybody stays together. You learn by discussions in the classrooms and all of that. That is also mostly missing. The online doesn't replicate the sort of learning that happens on the campus. So that way, out of these four types of learning, maybe the self learning and classroom learning we are able to adapt very well and translate that to the digital kind of media, but the laboratory part of it and the peer learning part is almost absent. And so therefore the experiences of IIT is not complete. And students are struggling. Everybody is looking at how to bring the students back and what can we do as we move ahead kind of a thing. But I think moving from a completely offline to a completely online was easier. It did not take much of an effort when it comes to lectures and all that. But moving to a hybrid mode, which is what will happen now starting from December at IIT Delhi, we are saying that the students will start going to the classrooms and take regular lectures. But there are also a bunch of students who are still away from the campus. So how do we mix these two? And that is where now we are looking at all possible options. And we also want it to be a live stream, whatever happens in the classroom. and also replicate that classroom environment in an online kind of a platform. I think that is one thing that we are all looking at right now, how best to do that in the hybrid mode. The advantage also that now we know almost 10 years of the transformation that it would have taken for offline to online has happened in 1 year. So therefore the 10 years condensed to 1 year, now to quickly adapt to these new ways of teaching and learning, and I think managing the whole thing has been a challenge. But now the at least the data is available, all the courses are online, so flipped classroom kind of approaches now will become more and more prevalent. I have also been talking to our faculty and say that when the institute reopens, don't go back to the pre-COVID kind of an era. Try to see what best we can take from the COVID times and see how you can blend all of that with the pre-COVID thing and evolve a model which is better than what it was, during the COVID or pre-COVID. So that is a kind of an approach that we are taking. It is different for different kinds of things, but one thing I should tell you is, when you talk about a place like IIT, it's not just about education, which is one aspect of it, but there is also research, there is also innovation. While education has taken a kind of a beating during the COVID time, I should tell you the research and innovation have got completely transformed and have got completely accelerated too. Because when it comes to research during the COVID time, the COVID brought a relevance to our research. Immediately there was a focus. Now the entire institute, everybody started to see how can I now contribute to the COVID problem? How can I see, how can I find solutions to addressing the COVID issue? Whether it is to diagnostic kits, whether it is to prevention, or whether it is to treatment, almost all groups started to move towards finding some solutions to COVID, and that has given a huge rise to the amount of research we could do and the amount of impact we could make in the society. Just in the COVID time, the technologies developed at IIT Delhi, recently I was looking at some data, almost like 15 million people have benefited from these technologies, whether it is the RT-PCR kits or the rapid antigen kits or the PPEs or the treatment kind of protocols. 15 million people is what we have been able to impact through our research in a short span of 1 year. That wouldn't have happened in a normal time, because in a normal time a lot of diffuse kind of research happens. Everybody is working in their own area, so you don't see the impact of the entire institute in the society. So that is one thing that has taught us now during the COVID time. It showed us also the depth of talent that exists on our campuses, which we were also surprised in a way. I mean, for someone to work on a rapid antigen kit and put it out into the market in a matter of 3 to 6 months time, getting approvals of ICMR, getting that kit exported, almost reaching 1 million people, using those kind of technologies, as there is something, which has opened our eyes to the kind of potential that exists on our campuses. Even on innovation, the startups have definitely benefited from COVID, and those of the startups which are able to reorient their activities and work with academia, take these technologies and deliver them to the society. I think those have also come to the fore, and many great things have happened in the startup ecosystem as well. So overall, I think we have been able to manage things very well. Education is something that has suffered probably the most, but it has also opened avenues for us for online kind of models. I should end by saying that we used to conduct these continuing education programs at IIT Delhi, which are all offline kind of programs. Now that has almost gone down to zero. We have not been able to conduct any offline programs. But we started an online CEP initiative under the brand name eVidya at IIT Delhi. We launched it last year. That program has now done 4 times the normal offline programs. In terms of revenues, while IIT Delhi kind of a place would do, let's say, $1 million kind of a offline CEP programs, now that number has gone up to $4 million just by moving on to the online platforms and reaching a larger section of people. Wouldn't have happened during the normal time. So therefore, I think adaptation is the key, and that many of our institutions have been able to adapt very well during the COVID time. I think now taking forward some of these positives and blending them with the normal times, I think the future definitely looks bright for all our institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One thing heartening to know has been that the COVID has sort of this focused research, and the results are here to see. And obviously, as you mentioned, regarding the education and learning part, this hybrid model will it's still in a sort of an evolving model. I'll come to you, Dr. Muna. Now, one is a similar question in terms of the experiential learning part, especially when lab simulation and are required. So, how in this hybrid learning model can that be successfully managed so that, again, being a premier institution, the quality of that learning cannot be compromised? So, how would you ensure both the things happening, especially for experiential learning in this new model?
My fellow panelists and all the audience here. I think it's a very interesting question. Professor Ram Gopal Rao also talked about it. Delivery of education in online mode was not that big a challenge. Of course, it was a problem, it was a concern, but I think all institutes ramped up to that very rapidly. Examination, yes, it could be still managed. Bigger challenge on how to ensure that examinations take place in fair manner and all that. However, the labs which actually require handling equipment physically, which require preparing specimens, samples, and all that, that actually had taken a major impact of offline education being stopped or put on hold. So how did we actually go about doing it, and how did we try to do it, and and what am I thinking on how it can be actually moved for going forward? So one of the things that we actually did was, if you look at all the experiments, there are certain kind of experiments which can be done in offline mode with a little bit of help of the lab technicians in the lab. There are certain experiments which can be done in virtual reality mode using even virtual labs. There are certain experiments which can be done possibly in other engineering colleges, in nearby places and all that. So one can actually think of a commodity labs, okay? But then there are certain things for which students will have to come, will have to do a lab here and these kind of things. Some of the things that we actually tried to do was issue kits for students so that they can do these experiments using their computers in their own houses and return our kits at the end of the course. This was a big challenge logistically, as well as handling things in a manner so that there's no shortage of kits, because usually in the labs kits are kind of shared from one day to another day among students. Handling equipment where knobs and these kind of things have to be handled is a problem, but then interfaces of equipment can be changed so that these can be handled using virtual mechanisms, using virtual modes, and some of these equipments could actually be fine-tuned, but that's not something that can be done overnight. What we instead did was we brought in students for the lab work with a very reduced density of student population in the campus, and ran the lab with a almost 1/3 of the capacity over longer periods, and that actually helped us to do the labs in a proper manner. But then the question is, experimental learning is a very, very important aspect of any technical education, science education, and this requires a very, very important method to be actually incorporated. One has to go for blended learning. In my opinion, some of the things that can be done is creating physical labs with standardized applications, with standardized experiments, and distribute them all over so that educational institutes can take advantage of these physical labs and the students can go to nearby labs and do the experiment. Of course, there will be a question of whether the experiment was done correctly or not, whether the labs upkept was all right or not, instruments were functioning or not. But then these are the nitty-gritties that going forward one can actually look at. The second thing that Professor Ashutosh Sharma also talked about, using augmented reality and virtual reality to create lab experiments where, for example, even assembly of design of heat exchangers, as Professor Ashutosh Sharma talked about, can that be done with augmented reality and mixed reality, where part of it is actually carried out by the students using gadgets, using sensors on their own systems, and part of it is carried out, or physical part is carried out in the lab and is relayed using augmented reality. I think these are some of the techniques that can actually help going forward. Um, but I think very important thing that one has to actually also look at is the goal of learning using experimental methods. I mean, how can these experimental methods be actually carried out in a distributed manner without compromising on the goals? That's a big question, big concern, big debate that will prolong for a very long time. Possibly we will have solutions by redesigning our equipment, by redesigning our methods, and implementing newer technologies in the circuit so that the labs can actually be carried out in a proper manner. So I'll come back to this. Over to you, Rajneesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So you're talking about basically the method of experimental learning in a distributed model, and that labs, these distributed labs, that's an innovative concept. Obviously, those logistical challenges in terms of whether an uniform standard or quality, how would you ensure that that would remain? But the concept is really innovative, and maybe in this blended or hybrid that talking about, that can be a solution. I'll come to Professor Raja Kumar now. One area I would like to, all the speakers, including Professor Sharma, also touched about, and Professor Rao and Professor Muna had also talked assessment. And again, especially being the IITs, if I may use a word, you are sort of as an example to all the other higher education academic institutions. So not only the assessment of your own students, obviously, that is critical, and students who are likely to go on and be in senior critical positions across the world. So assessment is critical, and also as an example to other higher academic institutions. So in the going ahead in the future in this blended learning model, how would you ensure that assessment is in no way compromised, while at the same time these challenges and what unfortunately looks likely that the starting of education would be this physical form would be in a start mode. There might be third or fourth wave, and institutions might reopen, might have to shut down again. So in this continuous blended learning model which we have to follow, how will you ensure a proper assessment process?
Yeah, thank you, Rajneesh, for giving me this opportunity. Certainly, the main objective of education is to impart education. Then that means impart knowledge, knowledge transfer, and of course, the utilization of the knowledge and training of a student in the utilization of the knowledge, whether it is for an application or other types of problems like solving a problem. And in engineering, it is designing systems, and the problems are engineering problems. Assessment is a very important component as well. And the assessment really assesses how much of learning a student has undergone and how much of application ability a student has learned in the process of going through the classes. Certainly, with the onset of the pandemic, the biggest challenge that was offered, that was posed to us, was to do the assessment. Certainly, education could be done very quickly. In fact, IIT Bhubaneswar could switch to online education with zero gap. Then came up with the problem of assessment. We have some commercial tools available across the globe to conduct computer-based tests, which are basically the short answer type of examinations, or to address multiple multiple choice type of questions. As you rightly said, in a system like an IIT, we test a student very comprehensively. And if you add the hybrid and blended learning to it, the dimension of testing goes up further. So we go for tests or examinations which involve designs, which involves production of drawings, which also involve derivations and the mathematical analysis. So with such a big dimension to hold an examination, you need a tool. Unfortunately, across the globe, to the best of my knowledge, there are no such tools available. Whereas we have tools available for computer-based tests. So what we could do at IIT, let me explain through the experience of IIT Bhubaneswar here. What we could do at IIT Bhubaneswar is, we selected the best possible, one of the top few computer-based test products available in the market. We had a discussion with the team, and the team agreed to evolve the system further and customize it and evolve it further. Therefore, they worked under our guidance. For example, the VBox team worked, R&D team worked with our guidance. The VBox product itself is significantly enhanced and customized further for our purpose. And what we did is, because of non-availability of a product, we developed a product by ourselves. Fortunately, we could innovate very quickly and develop a product by ourselves within a month and a half. We use the VBox system and its examination management system. As a part of our tool, we added additional invisualization to it. So through, and then we had multiple connections. We need 2 connections at least for the examination to be conducted. Of course, in rare cases, through an empowered help desk, it could be reduced to even a single connection, but that is done only for the select few who had bandwidth problems and connectivity problems. That is another very important issue, varying bandwidth. And in different locations, students take examinations from different locations, as Dr. Rao mentioned, even on a journey as well. So therefore, we could develop, necessity is the mother of invention. We could develop a product within a short time, apply it for the passing our own students very successfully. It's like a normal conventional examination done on the internet with invisualization included. So now we didn't go forward to market this product, but there is a huge scope for marketing this product. So when we innovate to this extent, it could really satisfy the requirement of the conventional pen and paper examinations done over the internet along with invisualization. So it could be done in our case, but a number of sister institutions have faced problem. So a couple of institutions tried out and they found that unfortunately the examination malpractices rose and there was a problem. So in our systems, we need certainly invisualization, which is essential to maintain the sanctity of an examination. Beyond that, if you, for example, holding a viva voce is another dimension of assessing the performance of a student. We typically do it conventionally in the laboratory as well as over a seminar. But these things could be done online with the existing methods themselves. We have tools for conferencing tools, multi-party conferencing tools. We used, for example, Microsoft Teams. There are other effective tools available in the market. With that, holding the Viva-Voces could be done. Taking the seminars of students could be done, except for seeing the face very closely in high resolution, the resolution of a human eye, everything could be done. When I myself asked this question, put this question, and got it surveyed, we felt that our students gave 70% of marks against 90% of marks for an exercise done with physical presence. So therefore, with that difference of in-person presence to presence over internet, causing about roughly around 20-25% of difference, everything else could be done. We have truly used, and several sister institutions also could put it in practice, and they have really done. And we already have an experience of 1.5 years of doing this. Therefore, by and large, except for that fine difference of around 20%, if I can put it in numerical terms, the whole objective could be done, and assessment could be possible. Whether it is holding a conventional examination or holding a Viva and going in for question and answers in a Viva session, etc. So there is only one thing, that is the hands-on laboratory, and assessment of a hands-on laboratory could not be done. Therefore, institutions like us who didn't want to compromise on the education have called the students to the campus for a short period, did the hands-on training also, and therefore I would say some institutions like ours could offer education in the usual way, at least in the IIT system, like any other year during the pandemic.
Thank you. So you mentioned about, as you rightly said, necessity is the mother of invention. So you basically customized a commercial solution, and especially the invigilation angle, that where you did maximum customization, and now you have sort of a package solution yourself that can be leveraged by the assisted institutions also. That's
Just a
great to hear.
small, yeah, just a small correction. We use the customized software as a subsystem of our tool. We
Okay.
added our own invigilation to that, integrated with the customized tool. Use that mainly as an examination management system. Therefore, the tool is the fully developed tool is our own. The major
Okay.
part of this 50 to 60% is the customized and enhanced commercially
Okay.
available.
Sure. Thanks. I'll come to Dr. Pawan next. From an IIM perspective, another important area has always been the industry academia collaboration. And any IIM that has been one of the, if I may say, one of the biggest attractions in terms of this, as a result of this collaboration, the sort of industry time that the students are offered, and which often proves to be an invaluable thing for their overall learning. In this new normal scenario, how this industry academic collaboration has continued, and two, or more importantly, going forward, how do you see the direction this is likely going to take?
Thank you. Thank you, Sri Rajneesh ji. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
All right. So thank you for this opportunity, and my sincere salutation to dear and respected colleagues. So the question is focused now with me: industry academia interaction in context of management institute and the future direction of it. And maybe that in a free flow, I may highlight some other issues also here and there. First of all, let me say about industry academia collaboration. You see, for your brushing up the memory, IIM Tiruchirappalli started its PG in management, now MBA, in 2011, and in 2020 we started also postgraduate program in HRM, that is called MBA HRM. Apart from that, we have also online long duration program, certification program, 1-year program, and that was done much before COVID started, and that has actually given some leverage to our system now. So given this background of our institute, and apart from this, we are also into training and also industry academia interface. Let me come to the point as raised by Rajneeshji. In our MBA HRM program, we have institutionalized that each one of the student would be handed over to one industry mentor also, and that will be that is done the moment the student starts his or her course program in the first term. So in this mode, including myself and faculty from especially human resource management area, we all interact with the industry mentor, and industry mentor and students meeting is done frequently. Because of COVID, we have not been able to invite the mentor here physically. That is a limitation, of course, but that is a proper system let down that industry mentor would be in continuous support for the students throughout 2 years. That is number one. Second one is that we have been interacting with industry personnel, not only in the COVID, I will say specifically, even before that, in order to update our curriculum. I think Dr. Sharma Saab raised this issue right in the beginning, that curriculum, I think he had raised the issue. Yes, that curriculum has to be updated, and in that course of action, and the academia, that is internal faculty, also external faculty, and plus industry representative, all three break our heads for basically to update the syllabi, and especially for searching for cutting edge electives, because they are very important dimensions of education. The next one is that in industry academia collaboration, we have actually post-COVID realized that every institution, and this I am telling to our all sister concerns, maybe IIM or IIT or any university, that in future there would be two lanes in any academic institution. Hindi mein kahun, wahan do galiyan hongi, do raaste honge. So there would be 2 lanes in the geography of the campus of any institution, and one lane would ensure face-to-face interaction, which will actually be composed of 90% face-to-face interaction and 10%, let us maybe it is online education. So this kind of blending, this kind of education would be available in one lane of the institution. The other lane would deal with those education which would be still majorly online even in the future, though COVID-19 will say goodbye to us, and I wish we should be able to say it goodbye as soon as possible. But that second lane, where online education will stay, at least with 90% of, let us say, its contribution in the whole education system would be there. So I love to say that in the future, the academic institution will have 2 lanes. And in one lane, it is majorly face-to-face. In other lane, it is majorly online. Taking this into account, we have also started during this COVID period more and more online, high-profile, short-duration management development program. Of course, this used to be face-to-face earlier, and we have not forgotten, and we will never forget the beauty of face-to-face interaction, because with that kinesthetics of face-to-face interaction, I personally miss many a times, especially I'm a student of human resource management, where human being has to deal with human being and technology coming in between as a link person. So sometimes we feel distanced by this technology. Of course, technology is a friend, but sometimes the friend itself makes a distance between, say, me and the receiver. So anyway, during this period, we have shifted to online interaction with industry practitioners, and the knowledge acquired through them in training is also used in teaching. So let me say, because time is so limited, that our teaching, training, research, consulting, these 4 areas of activities in which management teachers are generally involved, each rejuvenate another. So it is a kind of recurring acceleration or multiplier effect from one activity to another. So as I said, in designing the course curriculum, in executive education, in the case of, let us say, counseling and mentoring by industry experts, these all issues we have taken care. And I stop here because time is limited and you may like to go for some quick second round of interaction with all. Thank you very much.
Sure. My next, I'll come to Professor Maitre next. I'll like to, in that initial round, like to focus with you on the area. There's a lot of collaboration with other academic institutions in India as well as globally, definitely. So, how have these activities continuing in the current times and in the new normal? These academic collaboration program with global as well as other Indian institutions.
Thank you, Rajneesh ji. Thanks a lot. I think, as far as I am Nagpur is concerned, we have made a dual degree arrangement with the University of Lille, France. Our 5 students have physically gone there and they are attending the classes, and that program is going as if it is face to face. But when it comes to some of the global projects, say for example, we have global virtual team. Students from I am Nagpur work with the students from other partner institution, and normally there is a one guide from each institute for one student, and if they 5 students, for example, different continent, different countries, and where the day and nights are different. So there they work as a team for the project, and the respective faculty member will act as a guide. So that program, physically they are in the respective country and institution. However, they interact with a very different point of time. Maybe Australia, Indian time is different, and US and Indian time is different. So they do the project, and respective faculty member also cooperate. So that is another a global program. And we also have, project-based learning. We normally our students, because if you're looking at the global disruption, digital disruption, to develop the mindset, we have global immersion program, and our students earlier, before pre-COVID, they used to go to Singapore, Dubai, Korea, Japan, and France. But now, because of COVID, what they do is earlier also, before going 2 weeks, they used to make a preparation. They used to work with the institutions online. And now that online work is going on, they interact online with the industry guide, and they talk to them. And only physical going there is missing. However, rest all they do, and they interact. And also our alumni, senior alumni act as a mentor to our students in this immersion program. So e-mentoring happens. So this is how it has taken a different channel or different route, but global programs are on and they are going strong. But only the route has changed, or I can say the mode has changed. But without compromising the end and the rigor, it is going on. This is all about, I must say, that global programs. Apart from that, I must say that University of Lille, France, students are going to come next month for their dual degree program. So I am happy. So this is
Thank
as
you.
per.
Sure. Thanks. It's great to know. This first round, I'll end with Valan. If you can, you heard about all the premier institutions and things. As a technology solution provider, how can you sort of help the IITs and IIMs, the premier institutions of India? How can you sort of help them as a technology solution provider?
Sure, thanks. Good morning and good afternoon, eminent professional. Proud to be, midst of you in this panel. And from the technology side today, industry is ready to partner with institutions and bring their technologies and have them deployed so that the students of IIT, IIMs could get a real-time hands-on experience, what is happening, right? The leading edge technology, even the R&D capability, right? Institutions are today ready to bring to, industry is ready to bring to the institution campus. So I represent Fortinet. I'm from Fortinet. We have programs wherein we could get the actual security controls that we develop and know that we actually sell across the globe. Today we could give them to the campus free of cost. Like there is a Fortinet Security Academy program. So who signs for it today, they get access to the complete set of suits which has been used in the industry today to secure both educational campuses as well as the business organizations. So students can get to know this technology, experience them, make use of them, and see what are limitations are there. It's just not getting to know how to use this technology, but to understand what are the limitations of the commercially available products today, so that they are able to think through developing new functionality features that could address the evolving threats. So today, industry is ready to partner with this institution. So we could even set up honeypot kind of environment where you get to see the kind of attacks, threats that you see. For example, we are talking about assessment. What kind of challenges you see? I know, for example, when you do online assessment, you even check for the devices that's connected to the student's network. Is there any other device where you could do screen mirroring or screencast, and then some malpractice could happen? So I know testing tools that you have today can even check that and then detect if there is any change in the environment when it's taken online exam. So likewise, you know the practical requirements today already are doing a great job in addressing, keeping this continuing. But I'm just saying this could be taken to the next level in addressing the actual challenges the industry is facing. In fact, today cybersecurity is a domain where there's a huge skill set shortage, where academic institutions, right, can pitch in and then help address these gaps. And just today, I believe this opportunity that we have in front of us, we have learned, right, the physical institutions, the campuses alone need not be the boundary. We could take education across, and even there are topics which I like talked about, wherein we could set up labs across. It may not be restricted to the campuses. Today we have offices, shared offices, which, for example, employees could walk in and start doing their work, get access to whatever the company resources they have in a shared model. Likewise, even labs could be there, which was a very good thought process that was shared. And I really today feel that technology is there which could help address these challenges in a unified manner and also help get the performance needed. So in higher education, and when you are trying to open up, right, today even the continuous education program, when people talked about, you said there's a 4 times increase in number of people who are now opting for it. And so that way, when the institutions have to ramp up, today we have an opportunity where you need not be restricted by the campus. You could just take this online and whoever is interested, the education can be delivered to. So technology is there, which today you could make use of them to offer this in a unified manner without worrying about the risk. So earlier there used to be point products. If there is a web filtering to be done, you have a solution for it. If there's an antivirus to be taken care, there's a solution. But today, it becomes complex to manage multiple technologies. So to address that, we have unified offering. Fortinet refers this as a Fortinet Security Fabric, which brings in all the technologies together so that an institution can get a unified view, what's happening where at any point of time, and get a capability to take action real time. For example, you feel during an online exam, a student is following a malpractice. In real time, you will be able to monitor that and take an action. Maybe pause this exam or alert him or check further. So that is the kind of capability today. Technologies, cybersecurity tools are available, which will help you enforce and bring in the kind of control what you feel that is slightly challenging in this kind of environment, in this kind of situation. That's
Thank,
finished from my.
thank you. So now, since we have a little paucity of time, I will come to each of the panelists, and two areas I'd like to touch upon. One is Professor Sharma in the directions in the beginning talked about uh, this new gen technologies, inculcating them in the curriculum. So, what about making the curriculum more up to date and more than up to date? What I can say, industry relevant and new gen technologies. Valan mentioned about the cybersecurity framework. That is one. AR, VR, gamification, artificial intelligence, machine language. There are plenty of IoT, industrial IoT. Briefly, 2 minutes to each panelist. One is what are you thinking about inculcating these new gen technologies in the academic curriculum? And the other thing is what about the entrepreneurship? We talked about incubating startups. I'm sure most of the IITs and IIMs are doing it, but how can we sort of accelerate this process of incubating more startups and encouraging more entrepreneurship? I'll start with you, Professor Sharma. 2 minutes on these two topics to each of you. Thank you.
Yeah, you see, the curriculum, of course, has been continuously changing in IITs and elsewhere. Of course, that rate of change has been rather slow. For example, in a typical IIT, this curriculum review is take place every 10 years. Of course, instructors have quite a bit of flexibility in designing the course contents, and they take full advantage of that. But at the same time, there is always, like I pointed out, a tension in terms of revising curriculum, sometimes in a radical way. But remember, we don't have the luxury of waiting 10 years anymore, or even 5 years. That indeed the future technologies might be arising at a much faster rate, and also their lifetimes actually may become much shorter. So therefore, it's important that we have, of course, a capacity for self-learning, correcting curriculum, and so on. No doubt. So I think that this is something that people are aware of, and they pay more emphasis on that aspect. It's largely a question of mindset and so on, and the cultural dimension need to be addressed. The second aspect, which you said about innovation and startups, certainly, there have been more that has happened in that direction in the last 7 years than in the previous 70, for sure. And I think that people coming out of colleges are far more aware of this option, if you would, and there are many more mechanisms of support, both from the government and from the private sector, venture funds, and so on. So I think time is very right for it. It is accelerating. Do we need to do more? Certainly, we need to do more. And I think one idea here would be that if we wanted to go from, let's say, 100 technology startups in an IIT campus to 1,000, it may not have to be in the same campus. We often talk about the distributed model of everything now. So we need to evolve similarly based on tech tools, a distributed model of entrepreneurship and startup, which actually could be aided, could be empowered, enabled by some central institute like an IIT. So that is something to think about, because the current model of entrepreneurship startup would not support very large number of companies. And so those weaknesses could be looked into. And let me conclude by just saying very, very quickly one aspect. The weakness is of not having physical experiments. That is clear to everybody. We have all grown up with physical experiments. But let me also point out that there are many strengths in AR, VR, MR kind of experiments, which are actually not there in physical experiments. Now, just to give you a very quick example, we talk about heat exchanger. Now, in a lab, you cannot take apart an heat exchanger in every experiment. So you don't really know how it is actually constructed. And this would be true for anatomy, this would be true for physiology. You cannot be cutting people on demand and so on. So, in fact, even surgeons training, even pilots training, today it happens in a virtual environment. And it can indeed be, it can do something beyond what you can do physically. So, of course, idea is to combine the strengths of both. Thank you very much.
Professor Rao, your views. 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of curriculum revision happen in every Senate. If I just look back in every Senate meeting, at least 10 new courses are introduced, and we have Senate meetings every quarter. So that way, a lot of new courses get introduced. But the curriculum revision, which Professor Ashutosh Sharma is referring to, that happens once in 10 years, is a more of a structural kind of a revision, that adjusting the credits, modifying the entire structure, that you have to change, see some batches pass out, and then start doing it, that you don't want to tinker every year or anything. So that way the IITs to introduce a lot of new courses. So that has all been working very well. Startups now is the major boom now on our campuses. In fact, at IIT Delhi, a survey shows that every second student on our campus now wants to become an entrepreneur. They don't even want to sit for a jobs or anything. So we have done multiple things to enable that. One is a deferred placement scheme. At IIT Delhi, if a student wants to try a startup, the student can take a couple of years time and then start a company even after graduation. And if that doesn't work, they can come back and seek a job using the campus recruitment process. So that kind of a security or safety net that we provide as a campus. Even for faculty right now, we have multiple schemes that if we are targeting at least 1 in 5 faculty members at IIT Delhi to have their own startups, meaning 20% of our faculty, I would expect, would become eventually entrepreneurs themselves, because when faculty do that, then the PhD students and others, will actually start doing that, and that's how the deep tech innovation will thrive on our campuses. So we have programs for that. We have a program called FIRE, FIRE, Faculty Innovation and Research-Driven Entrepreneurship. If any faculty member says, I want to start a company, Institute gives a 50 lakh rupee grant, gives sabbatical to that faculty member and additional leave, so that the faculty member can take time off and with these funds, start a company and try to see, if that particular activity can be taken to the society. I think these are lots of things happening on our campuses, and many startups coming up, and many deep tech startups now are taking roots. I think another, I would think 3 to 5 years, you will actually see the impact of all that is happening right now, becoming more visible to the society. During COVID time, it has happened, but overall, you will see that impact in another 3 to 5 years kind of a time frame. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Muna. No, you're on mute. Say you're on mute. Your
Okay.
turn.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, if we look at the history of higher education in India, the almost like 6 7 decades back, we would be talking of curriculum designs, and it's like very elaborate methods of doing or introducing new things in curriculums. But I think over years now, in last 3 or 4 decades, the focus has changed on delivery side of it, commoditizing the higher education. And if at all, the last experience of lockdowns and offline and online debates and hybrid education has only accelerated it any further. So, as I agree with Professor Ram Gopal Rao that curriculum changes, the minor curriculum changes are actually happening on a continual basis, and structural changes which happen in IITs, they are like once in every 10 years, and that is continuous part. IIT Bhilai being a new institute established in 2016, we are on the growth trajectory right now, and therefore for us starting new programs is a lot much easier. We have been looking at new curriculums with change of time. For example, data science, artificial intelligence, these are our full-fledged programs. Even when we look at the traditional program, we see mechanical engineering is fast changing towards mechatronics and similar concepts. So it's like, and electrical and electronics engineering and telecommunication engineering is again moving towards computing. So a lot much more of computing actually getting involved in that. In line with these, we have introduced new curriculums, new programs, and such kind of things for curriculum changes. I agree that curriculum change is largely a mindset, as Professor Ashutosh Sharma talked about, and with commoditization of higher education, I think our demand on keeping pace with the times on curriculum is actually very, very fast. Changes are actually happening, and we are kind of keeping pace with times on that. Coming to innovation and startup, I think in all educational institutes, in higher education, technical education, it's a very big focus. Even at IIT Bhilai, we have established, with the help of Department of Science and Technology, under National Mission on Cyber Physical System, technology incubation hub, and that's where we are actually promoting a lot of entrepreneurship, and a lot of our students and faculty members are starting and jumping into this. As Professor Ram Gopal Rao says, maybe in 2-3 years time, maybe in 10 years time, we will actually see huge focus on entrepreneurship, and people will probably take entrepreneurship as a career growth option, as a career option in time to come. So I think I'm very optimistic about the future in terms of these two things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Professor Rajakumar, your views.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, this is what is happening. So normally, some of the speakers are found to be on mute invariably. So as Professor Sharma mentioned, the courses in the IIT system are coming up at some delay, maybe 5 years or 10 years. But if you look at how the pioneering introduction of new courses in the cream of global class institutions, you would find that always the graduate research outcome, which matures into introduction of a new course. And the graduate research itself depends on funding from the industry or government. Now, that comes from the future requirement. So when you follow this route of funding in a futuristic area, then graduate research coming up, and then that one maturing into a course would cause courses to be pioneering introduction of courses in the systems. If you look at some of the top institutions, globally well-recognized institutions like MIT, for the last half a century or 1 century, you must have found several pioneering courses coming from these institutions, and that's the route followed there. And then gradually the courses spread to other institutions as well. Our country too, we are nowadays going towards introducing courses in a pioneering way. To name a few, for example, we do not find courses on cyber forensics anywhere across the globe. Hardly there are any such courses. But we have a strong need for forensics. I'm not talking about security. I'm talking about cyber forensics. We use the issue today, and we have issues involving Facebook, Twitter, and the industry political scenario therein, and that coming into picture and defining new requirements. Okay, such issues are certainly there. And therefore, courses like cyber forensics should come into picture. IIT Bhubaneswar started 3 years back a course on cyber forensics. I would say that this is a pioneering introduction of a course. And the problem is that it is hard to find faculty who can teach this course. So we are taking the help of teachers across the globe to do that. Certainly VR is one such course. We are coming out with a course on visualization, which is essential for augmented reality, then even virtual reality and mixed reality. So similarly, cases for AR/VR is another course which IIT Bhubaneswar is coming up with. I would say this is a pioneering introduction, but certainly ahead, an introduction of a course going by the need of the industry. Nano manufacturing, micro manufacturing. If you look at the history of micro manufacturing, courses were introduced across several of the institutions. Now, nano manufacturing and devices devices going through nano manufacturing route and sensors for nano manufacturing are emerging as new courses. Computing, quantum computing has been a course in the IT system for quite some time, but other types of quantum technologies are now making inroads, and courses are being introduced. Therefore, I would say that in the IIT system, we have new courses coming up very well, and the pioneering introduction of courses also has been is started and it is coming up now. Certainly, there are no second thoughts about when you talk about our IITs and then other institutions encouraging entrepreneurship from both faculty and students. It is happening in different levels. In senior IITs, it's going on a little more aggressively, but the younger IITs are also gearing up in this area. What we do in the IIT system is to provide the support environment through courses, as well as bringing in mechanism to give seed grants to that extent. And like Professor Rao mentioned, actually things like deferred placements also helps. We are coming up with such systems to encourage our students to come up and start a startup and carry on entrepreneurship. A fundamental requirement here is a mindset to be an entrepreneur, a mindset to take risks, and someone taking pleasure in taking a risk and taking both success and failure almost in the same way. That's what is needed. And what we need today in this country is to catch youngsters early and introduce them to some risk taking, positive risk taking, and also to be dashing and to be adventurous. So that's what is needed. It is not necessary that everybody should be inducted with this, but for those who are made for it should be provided with such opportunities at an early stage. This is done. I'm sure in future we are going to see in the IT system, like that, as my colleague Dr. Rao mentioned, in 5 years you will see some significant difference. In 10 years you will see further difference. So certainly things are going on well.
Sure. Dr. Pawan, very briefly, again, I'll come to you with a similar question. From the IIM perspective about the new things in the academic curriculum and obviously entrepreneurship, very briefly.
I'll just count few points which we have been addressing, and I will not go into any elaboration. Number one, regarding course curriculum, every alternative year, we will go for a major course curriculum. But of course, every year, 1 week after the convocation will be devoted to discussion on the cutting edge areas of the courses and the program. So that is one point. Regarding course curriculum, we are always on edge. And because management is, I think my colleagues will perhaps agree, that compared to technology, management is more vulnerable to cutting edge, let us say, development. So we need to be more dynamic because subject nature itself is volatile. Second point, that this is for all my colleagues here, that some of the excellent teachers 2 years back in hybrid model need some hand-holding, some kind of training to regain their excellent status as a teacher. Because in hybrid mode, what happens, 50% students in your class, 50% outside, and you have to actually keep oscillating between using technology and having eye contact with the students in the class. So I find that some kind of hand-holding for teachers needed in management institutes. Regarding incubation, startup, etc., 2-3 points I would like to add here, that we have added a new course that is called Entrepreneurial Manager. And this course is very important, and I think it should be taken up by any university or even IITs, which actually helps to understand a blending of mathematics-based or data-based decision-making factors combined with human mind's mentality to fall prey of common sense-based decision-making. So that is a very good program that we have started, not program, but a course. Next one that we are collaborating with technology institutions in local area, including maybe NIT or Bharatiya University Technology Institute. And with them, we would like to create a hub for giving managerial insight to technological issues in technology institutions. So these are some of the humble efforts we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Maitri, very briefly on these two areas, your views.
Yeah, thank you, Rajneesh. First of all, you see, you talked about the curriculum. I must say that revising curriculum is not the only solution to meet the relevant supply required in future. Future of work and workplace are keep on changing due to disruption. So therefore, preparing the students for life, for lifelong learning. So therefore, the curriculum revision is the one part, but whether we do the management alternative year and maybe engineering, maybe 10, 5 year, whatever it is. But not only adding the new generation courses is going to help, but we have to, as Professor Rajat rightly said, we have to look into the delivery. The way we deliver the course, pedagogy is going to play important role to develop the mindset of students for perpetual learners. And that is where, we have modified the pedagogy, phenomena-based learning. We are getting into that so that the students can pick up or our students can be a change master to lead the unknown roles in unborn companies. And that's what going to happen. And whether after the moment today, what we teach after the 4 year graduation in engineering, those and the job will not be available. So that is where how to prepare unknown role and unborn companies. For that purpose, the pedagogy plays an important role. I think management institutions, most of the IIM, they are gearing up. And since we are only postgraduate institutions, most of the IIM, so pedagogy plays an important role. As far as uh, our entrepreneurship is concerned, IIM Nagpur is concerned, we have a Section 8 company, IIM Nagpur Foundation for Entrepreneurship Development. And we have this year 33 women entrepreneurs who graduated out of that. They are all operating their own company very successfully. That's one part. Second one, we have partnered with Government of India, Ministry of Skill and Entrepreneurship as a part of World Bank project, that is the MGNF, Mahatma Gandhi National Fellowship Program. Maharashtra and Sikkim, 40 each district we are preparing one fellow entrepreneur, 36 for Maharashtra and 4 for Sikkim. So the 40 fellows we are creating as entrepreneurs every district one. And similarly, we are going to work out some other schemes with government of other states. And this is what about the entrepreneurship is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We are extremely out of time. So, Professor Sharma, I will just request you to 1 minute, since you set the direction in the beginning. So, I will ask you for the closing remark, but very briefly, 1 minute. What is the future direction, and what is your opinion regarding that?
So, of course, we have heard some very deep discussions and the directions in which our education, especially higher education, is evolving. As was also pointed out by Professor Ram Gopal Rao, that some of these changes, everybody said it, have been happening. They have been in the offing, but the pandemic has accelerated their pace. So we know that all sorts of digital cyber companies, all sorts of skills which are required there and so on, have come to the forefront. And this, while new normals that would be set up, It would not be completely going back to the old normals. You remember when the pandemic came in, people were asking, how fast can we go back to the old normal? Even then, in the 2 weeks into pandemic, I used to ask them, what is it about the old normals that you would like to keep? I mean, make a list of that. But at the same time, we have to move on, and I think people would be more acceptable of these changes now than they ever were. And so there is, of course, every technology, every change has a light and a shadow. So we know about the lights, if we know about the shadows, then we know how to balance these things and move forward. It is not something, it's not an option anymore. You see, technologies have their own mind, and people who adopt them, who use it, they gain something from it. So then, march of technology is inevitable. About the issue about curriculum, actually, what I was pointing out, this is very, very hard to actually drop a course, especially in these old engineering, for example, civil, mechanical, chemical, and so on. It would be a lot more different in computer science, I'm sure, because that's such a young discipline. But things which are well entrenched is very hard actually to remove any course, because if you want to make place for new courses, if you want to make place for new knowledge, and in fact you need to track that on a real time basis, it becomes very hard to do that. While new courses are introduced, they are mostly courses which are not mandatory courses, that they are basically options, they are elective courses and so on. So we would leave that. I'm sure that many more changes would happen there. And I think on the whole, our direction has been right. I think Indian institutes, whether it's IIM, IITs, ICERs now, and central universities and few others, they have always been very proactive. I mean, people have always been debating, and this is the right kind of culture we need in order to bring changes. And the final lesson of pandemic, of course, is that nothing happens until you work together, until you connect, until you have a shared purpose, until you have a clear and present purpose, which is shared by everybody. That vision is shared by industry, by the government, by academia, by startups, and so on. Things really happen, as was pointed out by Professor Ram Gopal Rao. So many things happen so rapidly in 2 3 months. Cutting edge technology is developed in 2 3 months. How did that all happen? This is the lesson that we need to integrate in our education and move forward. I think future is bright. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks. With note, we will conclude the discussion, and we are creating a report of this, which we will share with all of you. And I'm sure even the audience who are watching this live would be able to emulate some of the best practices that were discussed. So, thanks to all the panelists again. Wishing all of you a good day ahead. And we had a wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.